Just say you were driving from Portland, Oregon to Portland, Maine. It's the only stoplight on I-84 all the way. Because it was the only stoplight on I-84 on the interstate. Well, as you know, Mackey's kind of remote. But, you know, Doug recognized a couple things. Number one, it's rural Idaho. Number two, with the sophisticated equipment he's got, the economic unit that he can put in place requires about 10 employees, and that includes 3 in administration and 7 in production. That's all it requires. And it's so expensive that the transportation isn't a consideration. Being able to haul it in and back out of there isn't a consideration. Because each unit, however small that might be, that these folks are going to be making, which is part of the total apparatus, but even that one little unit is $3,000. Just that one little unit that they can probably make 5, 6, 7 a day in this one little plant in Mackey, Idaho with 10 people. So I said to Doug, you know, how many of those are you going to need? He said, you know, we could solve the unemployment and the economic problems in rural Idaho if we get this going and prove it up in Mackey. We could probably put one in most little towns around Idaho, 10 people, stable workforce. They get up, they show up for work on time, they appreciate the job, the values that they have, all of those things are necessary. And fortunately, there's plenty of those places in Idaho. I told him, well, I got 204 places that we can do this. How many of these little garage industries do you need? There's some security problems, so we have to consider that because of the highly sensitive materials that he's using. They're also making all the Humvee stuff, you know, the new armored for Humvee. And they've been able to make this application of this new material that he's got on Kevlar. And so now they can make these vests where you can almost, I wouldn't want to do it. I wouldn't want to be part of the test. But a 50 caliber, you know, I don't know if you know 50 caliber, but in the old nomenclature, I was 19 Delta when I was in the military. And if any of you have been in the military, and if you've been in the Army, you know what 19 Delta is. That's reconnaissance. That's a scout. That's a sniper. That's all of those guys that kind of set it up, you know, whenever they said the object is now hot, release the bomb. If you've got a laser-guided bomb, you spray just a little bit of electricity on whatever object it is that you want it to hit. And you can do this from about 800-900 yards away, and they can release a bomb at 25, 30, 40, 50,000 feet. And if it's laser guided, it'll hit that. It'll go right down the chimney of that where you want it to. Well, anyway, a 50 caliber would almost punch in the side of an M48 tank, which is about 11 inches of molten steel, especially if it was what we called a heat round, which is armored piercing, a high explosive armored piercing heat, H-E-A-P, round. Well, now to have a material that we can make tanks, that we can make Humvees, and that we can actually put on people to protect them is amazing. And right here in Idaho. Right here in Idaho. The potential for that is unbelievable. Now, I hope I haven't given out too much information. If they do, Doug will be calling me. But what I'm saying is if we've got, and we have a lot of Doug Sayers around Idaho. When, you know, some of them may be in kindergarten today, and some of them may be somewhere in the high school strata, and some of them, you know, may be out working in the marketplace. But I will tell you, there is just the amount of patents that we produce right here in Idaho. You know, per capita, more patents than any place else in the world. We produce right here in Boise, Idaho. Now, a lot of that has to do with some of the high-tech companies that we've got. But a lot of it also has to do with the Doug Sayers of the Red Thomas. Anybody remember Red Thomas? started a company called Trust Joist. Trust Joist. Revolutionized the truss business for all kinds of construction. You know, I can remember some of the first houses in construction that I worked on, we had to do it all freestanding. There weren't any truss. You couldn't call somebody up and say, send us a truss. They wouldn't know what you were talking about unless it was an old girdle or something. I'm not sure. But all I can tell you is that I think we've got the potential. I've seen us work our way out of this several times before, number one. Number two, I think we've got the potential available today, not only in the creative genius, not only in the workforce capability where we can train them up, and that was where I was going with Doug, is we are now, we've engaged a lot of Labor Department funds to train these folks up, that we're working in the high-tech equipment area someplace that are now becoming these high-tech welders. You know, they're making $65,000, $70,000 a year. Can you imagine 10 jobs like that in Mackay, Idaho? What that's going to do for that little town's economy? You'll be running up there selling some of those houses, next thing you know. But we're big on potential in Idaho. We've worked our way through these problems before. And, you know, I would tell you that, you know, the economists, the government economists, not mine, but the government economists have predicted 13 of the last 3 recessions that we've actually gone through. Let me say this again. That they predicted 13 recessions when we only went through 3. Okay? And when I was in Congress, we were, obviously, I was there during the dark days of 9/11. And, you know, it was a tough time. It was a tough time because we got our dollars down, and it took a while for us to get back. Well, we don't need to go there. We don't need to go there in Idaho, and I'm not going to take us there in Idaho. We're going to do what we have to do at the government level to make sure that that private sector and that market level in the state can work its magic and keep things going. $75 a square foot for a house is a tough place to start, but it's probably a good place to start because it's not reflecting what it's worth, but it's reflecting what the market will pay. And it's unfortunate that when you go through these things, sometimes you have to pay what the market will pay and not what your costs are in it. I mean, I wish it were the other way around. And if it were, I'd probably still be in the farming and ranching business to the extent that I was before. But it's not. And, you know, the years that we had where we were getting easily $200, $180, $200 a square foot for a house, depending upon, you know, what builder built it and where it was built and those sort of things, factoring in the land as well. Those days are gone for a while, but they'll probably come back. The guys that got $8, $9, and $10 for wheat last year, the Idaho farmers, they got that kind of money for wheat and corn if they had any on the open that hadn't already preseason contracted it. You know, they saw that for 2 years. But it's going to go away. It's not going to come back. But they'll survive. They'll continue to produce because they do what they do best. And that's all I'm asking you in this room to do, and that's all I'm going to ask any Idahoan to do, is do what you do best. Continue that effort. And know that as long as you keep doing what you do best, and even if you have a little bit of a slump, as long as you keep generating the kind of energy that I know that you folks, and I know that folks all over Idaho can generate, I would tell you, we'll get out of this. We'll get out of it much quicker than the rest of the nation. And they'll be looking up to Idaho, that 43rd star in that American flag, and they'll be saying, my gosh, if they can do it in Idaho, maybe we better go up there and start our next business. And by the way, when we go with our families, we'll have to buy a house so that when we move the family in, we just buy a house, and when we move the family in, we turn it into a home.